So, risky business, living your true identity. Okay, why that and why now? Well, one of the things there we go, we're in the 12th month, the month of Adar, and that has the feast of what? Purim, right, which means what? What does Purim mean? Oh, come on, it's for lots, lots, because it was in the lots were set, okay? So the very thing that was the instrument that the enemy thought he was going to use by divination, right, to create a time and a crisis, God, Judah flips it. I love God doing that. And they make it into a feast that goes back and recognizes how it all started was the lots. Okay, it's interesting. They could have called it Mordecai's fast or something like that, but they call it Purim. Anyway, but it is about Esther, but also very much about Mordecai. And the fact is, again, with that risky business, living out your true identity, their identities, true identities, really created risk, right? For Mordecai, because he did not have to tell anybody at the gate he was a Jew, but he did. Okay? And that triggered Haman's wrath against the whole people. And then Esther lived in a sort of a secret identity until the right place and time, but when she was called out into that, it was hugely risky, right? In terms of that. So that's part of the connect with that right now, but also that we're in the month, the 12th month is connected to the tribe of Naphtali, and the name is wonderful. With great battles I've wrestled, with my sister I have prevailed, so she called him Naphtali. And so that idea about wrestling to prevail is in there as well, and I think it has a real deep connection with identity. And I think it's part of what Esther really struggled with. I think it's something, the battle that's ongoing, but I think that, like Esther, there's a lot at stake. Say this, I matter.
I matter.
I matter. Yeah, in other words, the glory that's waiting to be revealed out of you, Christine. I don't know, Christy, sorry, how all the ripples of that are going to be, but I know they are. And if you don't, I know there are too. Esther had an option of whether or not to arise into that true identity or not. Okay? And it can be very simple. I love the story about the 5 fish and the 2 loaves, right? But here's the question, who brought them? Who brought them? A little boy. What's his name? We have no idea, but here we are over 2,000 years later, and we're talking about him. Because the fact that he stepped forward into that one act created a ripple effect in terms of what Jesus did, how it was multiplied, the impact there, and the fact that it's recorded. A little boy. I mean, don't you want to meet him someday? Dude, what was that like? Why did you even do that? That was a lot to bring up. But what were you thinking? Were you thinking that was a snack for Jesus? What? I mean, I don't know. Who did he go on to become? How did he live out his days? But the ripple effect of that, and I think we need to just stay tuned to that. Well, I really appreciate last week, John Nicholson and Andrew helping to lead worship in here, and Penny, of course, getting up and bringing the word. And then just the spirit moving on you guys. That was fun to watch. And I got more of a report. Those of you watching online, yes, we did cut it off after Janet got up and was drunk and disorderly in the best way under the Holy Spirit. And just things continued going, They had to carry her out the front door. And she was very concerned being taken home that someone not think she was coming home drunk because it's a small neighborhood. So anyway, but great things. But yes, I was away for 6 days in silence and solitude. And under directives. Yeah. There was a yay back there. I think that was from Levi. Is that what it was? Yeah, good place to be. While I was there, of course, I had my scripture. I actually had 4 different books I was reading. 2 key ones were this one called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and this one, Healing the Orphan Spirit. And when I go away, I just soak and I read and I write stuff and I just go back and God begins to percolate things out. And so let me give you just a few bullet points that then lead into this connection, because God did not give me like a whole trajectory and answers, but he recalibrated me for a how. Okay. And I'm smart enough now to know that in my prophetic role, that what he is teaching to me is never just for me. It's a broader piece. And it does connect into identity. But let me give you a few bullet points here. One, it's more important to God who I become than what I accomplish. Paul would say it this way, I can do all these things and I can give my body to be burned, but if I have not love, I'm nothing. He is far more concerned with the character and the who I become, with who you are become than what you accomplish. You copy that? Okay. And yet it's very easy to start getting that flipped around. Oh, but wait, okay, we're going to touch on that. Number two, my function has to flow out of my identity. My identity isn't created by how I function. Okay. Ask anybody, hi, what's your name? Tell me who you are. Oh, I'm so-and-so and I do this. We immediately go into the function, right? That's how we typically serve our identity out there. This picture is appropriate because God first developed the warrior heart in me. You might say that's the fire. And then he took me aside and has spent years fostering the father heart. And now he's pressed that. And those are deep, deep within me. And they come out of my understanding of being a true son. But you can put me anywhere and those two parts are going to be there. And I war because I'm a warrior. It's not that because I fight that I'm a warrior, right? You have to get how that works, okay? Because this sense of identity is really, really key. Three, most important thing that I can bring to any of you at any time, whether it's up front here or one-on-one or whatever else, is to be fully present. And it means fully present to him, and then because of that, I can be fully present to you. And one of my favorite quotes is from a disgraced comedian, but he said, 90% of life is just showing up. Okay. I meant it as a joke, but I've come to see that he was speaking prophetically. That really is true. If we truly show up, and I think he got the percentage wrong, though. I think 100% of life is showing up. Okay. But the question is, how present are we able to be to God and stay present and connected so I can be present then to you? Hello? The guys on Monday night, we were talking about some of this. And then this last one, I must align my patterns, habits, and schedules to his design of me. That's one of the things he took me apart on and said, I am not honoring the manufacturer's specifications for how he has wired me and put me together. So the challenge is to dig down and let the Lord reveal true identity, but then he's got to show you how to walk in that. Jackie was kind of talking about that. And it bugs you sometimes. Sometimes you're just going to have to get over yourself to accept yourself as what he's done. Yeah? And bottom line then, out of that, I have to be glory-led. I cannot be need-driven. Okay? Just because there's something there to do, just because there's a time to maybe teach, I cannot be driven by that need. I have to be led by the glory each time. You good on this? You all just a little bit tired? Okay. So let me... God walks me through. I do a lot of this stuff on the board up there, and I start putting the pieces together to try to go, okay, how does that connect to this? Where does it flow from that? And then I begin to get it, and he lights up something in here, and then it's like, oh crap, now I got to try to explain how to get there. So, are you ready for this? Say okay. It's not complicated, I don't think, and it's probably somebody else did it out there, but this is just how God's shown this to me. Kind of 4 different areas here, and I'm going to just give them some colors to break it out. Function, that's very simple. What I do, why I do it, and how I affect people around me and everybody else, right? How many of you know most of how you function? Okay. And then out of that, a lot of time, like I said, people will, because of that, give their identity. Hi, how are you? Who are you? Oh, I sell so-and-so this. Oh, I'm president of, I'm a carpenter and yeah? And people often want to put your identity with a function. Who is Jesus? Oh, isn't that the carpenter's son? Do you understand how they, okay, out of the function, the identity, but the identity really the function has to flow from the identity. And here's the problem. When we're talking about identity, often it's which version of yourself is there? Anybody here have multiple personalities? Raise your hand. You all do. You may not have the disorder, okay? Or, anyway, I won't get into DIDs and what that is, but we all have that, right? We all have, so which self is showing up at any given point in time? And then here's what's important though, identity always flows out of authority. We were talking with the guys in the prison, and a lot of them have been in for 20 years or so. And there's been a lot of the authority imprinting about their identity and therefore how they can function. You get that? Okay. Well, it's beyond just that. If we think about us, the authorities in your life that have spoken into you and imprinted, fathers, mothers, leaders, teachers, institutions like the government, culture, and media, and the word. Yeah? And so all these things have been and continue to be speaking into you. And the question is just, okay, what are they saying and how am I receiving it? But bottom line, above that, we've got to put two other factors, the triune God or the prince of the power of the air. Because they're both not without leaving themselves without a witness, right? The Lord is speaking through fathers and mothers and leaders and teachers and institutions and culture and the word. But guess what? The prince of the power of the air is speaking through fathers and mothers and leaders and teachers and etc. So usually this would be the voices that are out there. This would be becoming and what you're becoming and what is revealed. And this is your presence. How are you felt when you show up? What's your impact on it? Is this making sense? Okay. So authority, whatever authority you are submitted under begins to imprint your identity and your function comes out of that. I showed some clips from Les Miserables, the 1996 movie. The opening scene is just amazing. If you haven't seen that movie, you should. But Jean Valjean is sleeping on a bench, and a woman says, "Why are you sleeping here?" He says, "I've tried everywhere." She says, "You haven't tried that door." She points to a door. He knocks on the door, and the door opens up, and it's a bishop and his assistant. And he goes, "Do you have any food?" And he goes, "Please come in." He says, "I'm a convict," and he holds up this piece of paper. He says, "I can't read, but I know what it says. He's dangerous." And the bishop just looks at him. "I know who you are." And he welcomes him in. And so begins this conversation, and she asks, for what did they, what were you arrested for? He said, and he looks at her, he says, "Maybe I killed somebody," and she gets all scared, and the bishop's just kind of looking at him knowingly. And so Jean Valjean looks at him and says, "How do you know I'm not going to kill you?" And the bishop just leans back and goes, "How do you know I'm not going to kill you?" He says, "What's that, a joke? We're just going to have to trust each other then." But he then goes and says, "I was a thief and I spent 19 years. Well, he sleeps in this new bed, but in the night has a nightmare about returning to that. And what comes out of that is that identity that's been imprinted on him by authority over and over and over again. So in the dark of the night, he goes and steals all this stuff. Of course, he gets caught, dragged back. And in front of the bishop, the constables are bringing him. And they say, "Yes, we searched him and we found all this silver. He said you gave it to him." And the bishop goes, "Well, of course I did. But Jean Valjean, you forgot the candlesticks." And it's just so, he's so shocked and he's just stunned. And he's like, "You're letting me go." Anyway, the gendarmes leave away and the bishop takes the knapsack with all the silver in it. And he walks up to Jean Valjean, he pushes it into his chest and he flips back his hood. And he says, "Don't you forget. Don't you ever forget. You've promised to become a new man. And with this silver I have ransomed your soul from hatred and evil. And I give you back to God." It's this moment, but see, it took another authority to speak into him. Okay? And to give a new identity. And then he walks that out, becomes the mayor of this town and all this other thing, and then becomes a force of justice. Make sense? Okay, it's very simple in a way, but there's this huge missing block right here. And what it is, it has to do with this thing called attention. And by that, when that word's coming down, there's a question whether you're open or closed to it, because it can be good or it can be bad, right? And then it's a question of time. Specifically, repetition. How often are you hearing the same thing over and over and over again? How many times did you hear it growing up? You're just a bad girl. Well, you're just dumb. Okay, right? Sometimes it doesn't take much, but repetition over and over again. And then it reinforces certain things or it can challenge. But depending upon how you're able to filter that through, we will tend to come into agreement. Okay? This is this critical piece in between, and I call it focus. So that the voices speaking into you, then the question of your focus, what am I listening to? What am I letting in? That generates then, as an identity, who you become or what is revealed. Do you understand? And that then in turn affects how you are present, both present to God and present to other people. I really believe we're supposed to be presence people more and more, folks. That means wherever you are, whatever you're doing. You're out there on the flight line looking on something, okay? You're in the back doing numbers, okay? You're teaching. You're where God has you, but it's the presence. You know, Peter's shadow caused people to be healed. A little bit of presence issue right there, right? Just Jesus walking along and somebody just touching the hem of his garment. Okay, so just again, another thing. Authority, attention, identity, and function. So the triune God speaks through fathers, and I say multiple because we may have had only one biological father, but we have a number of fathers over time. Okay? And that's a big, big question. Who is fathering you? Because there's a huge hunger for that. Yes, it's ultimately got to be God, but God will work through people. Who is mothering? How is that coming down? God had to refather me over time with a number of men, not because my dad didn't deeply love me. He just had no gas in the tank when it was over with his work. He was a workaholic. So when they came home, there was plenty of, I knew he loved, but there just wasn't any energy to do anything. So God had to send other people to refather. But triune God sending good word through the Father, and then it runs through that filter, whether if we're open to it, then all these things come into account, whether it's repeated, reinforced, or challenged, comes into agreement, and the identity comes out as a true son or a true daughter out of that. And out of that, your actions, what you do, why you do it, and how it affects. Okay, simple thing, right? You tracking this? Okay. Then again, Prince of the Power of the Air too often has worked through fathers, okay? And trust me, he can use scripture really, really well. He's a brilliant theologian, but he's a devil, okay? If you're wondering about that, then you just look at Jesus and the temptations, because he uses scripture to try to tempt Jesus, okay? And my dear old dad, enemy got to him, basically said, you know, if you just take care of the church, God will take care of your kids. Okay. It's a good justification for a workaholic, right? Whose identity is coming out of that and just taking care of that and not attending everything. So Prince of the Power of the Air has come through so many fathers. The issues there are huge. And again, if we're open to it, often when we're younger, there's just no way to filter that out. We're a sponge. It comes in. It saturates. And again, with time and repetition, reinforcement, the challenge, we come into agreement, and out of that comes an orphan heart. And that begins to drive behaviors about what you do, why you do, and how it affects you. And ultimately, I'll touch on this briefly, but there's two primary things that come out of an orphan heart, either rebellion or religion. And it's connected in very clearly, I think, with this. This is known as the parable of the prodigal son, right? But what it should actually be called is this: the parable of the father's heart and two orphan spirits. Hello. The younger brother, I can't trust you. Your rules control me. I'm out of here. Yeah? Rebellion. It's the orphan spirit that sets in on Adam and Eve when they decide to go ahead and violate what God gave them. The thought there that you can't really trust God. Did God really say, oh, you won't die? You'll be like him. Oh, there's something I can get. And so that's always the danger. And of course, when he returns, it's great that he's returning, but he's still returning with an orphan spirit. How do we know that? Because he says, I'm not worthy to be son, just make me your slave. No clue of the heart of the Father at that point, right? Still not trusting the heart of the Father. Trusting that he's a good and righteous judge, but not that he's that forgiving, that loving. And then the elder brother, though, who I just, look, I followed all your rules, Dad. I've worked hard to serve you. Where are my rewards? Okay. Again, the choice is on the orphan spirit is the religious reaction. Again, I can't trust your heart, so I understand now what I have to do to earn it. Is anybody identifying with any of this? So we can either be rebellious or we can be religious. And the challenge is, this is, I believe, a stronghold in so many of us that had an issue, okay? And the challenge is a lot of times, one of the things he says in this book on the healing the orphan spirit is that most churches are really just orphanages. Have so many people who are still trying to earn it, still trying to do the show up the right thing. Well, God, and then they get to be a little bit angry when things go sideways. Well, because there's a sense of, well, God, you sort of owe me. I've done this, this, and this. I've shown up. I've tithed. You've never seen that? You've never heard that come out of you? Yeah. Okay? That's that orphan thing coming up. Okay? That's that religious part. And okay, but that's going to be the way, then screw it. I'm not going to. Okay? Nobody here has ever done that. So, okay. Got that. Tim's not here, otherwise I could pick on him for it. So I'm just going to pull up some things from this healing the orphan spirit, because the issue of identity, are you getting this? And true identity is key to this. And so are you a servant or are you a son? Now, when I say a son, I'm just using that biblically, right? Because a son in Scripture was one that has not only the relationship, but authority and inheritance, okay? But you can put in sons and daughters. And this is a great way to think of it. Are you living for God or are you living from God? A servant will live for God, but a true son or daughter lives from God. You see, the servant is still working on the function that leads to the identity, that gets the goods. If I do this, then I am this. And boy, the time that this just bowled me over years ago, my dad was a dear man. He loved Jesus, and he worked his heart out, obviously, and just led a lot of people to the Lord, brought a lot of people into freedom and everything else. But I remember he had just about retired, and we were talking about, I'm trying to remember what we were, but he said, when I get to heaven, all I want to hear is, well done, my good and faithful servant. And I didn't say anything, but because it just rose up in me. All I want to hear is, welcome, my son. And it became crystal clear right there that my dad, and I didn't have words for it at that time, I just knew it was different. That really my dad was still working out of an orphan spirit. And the very sad thing about that is when my dad declined and he had dementia and Parkinson's came in and the cognitive capabilities kind of fell off, underneath this was all this fear that he wasn't going to get in. He hadn't done enough. You see, that orphan spirit still hadn't been healed. Okay, hello? And I just went, oh, Lord, please do all the work you got to do in me. Because night after night, I'd be on the phone with him, going back again about salvation and the blood and why. But see, it was at a deeper emotional level. And my dad, bless his heart, born and raised came up during the Depression, born in 26, the last of 5 kids, started paying rent to help out with the household, when he was 12. Dad had to work to survive. Orphan spirit, okay? But that as an identity is really problematic, and the enemy is using that across the church. Okay? Because the orphan spirit then in the church usually comes the religious thing, and then you get the elder brother syndrome. And right now we're getting ready for a huge influx of people from revival that won't look anything and sound anything and do anything like the normal Christian folks. Okay? And the question is, how is the body of Christ going to deal with it? Because when the Jesus People movement came up, most of the body of Christ went, yuck, oh, no, right? And I watched some of that firsthand. Anyway, this was a very big key thing for me that I hope it'll speak to you. You can either be under the pressure of the orphan spirit or work from the pleasure of the Father. This just hit me because it's like, Lord, how many of you feel pressure at times? Yeah, okay. Rest of you are just lying, that's okay. Pray off the lying spirit. I'm gonna have to. But see, I thought, I want to be doing everything from the pleasure. From the pleasure. And I was sharing with the men the other night the movie Chariots of Fire. Many of you may have known that or may not. But Eric Liddell, this was in 1926, was going to be a missionary in China and was going into the Olympics. And his sister was very afraid that if he won, which he probably would, that the fame would just keep him from going to China. And he assured her, no, it's not. But he said this one line. He says, he made me for this and this, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure. Coming into your true identity is operating in those functions when you feel his pleasure. And if you can't come to mind with those things, then you need to keep going to him. Say, Lord, you got to show me. One of the things that if I meet with somebody for the first time, I'll often say, well, tell me about what you love and what makes you come alive. That normally will give you little insights into where that is, what God has said in them. There's a number of other questions. This is another very important thing. Orphans will compete where sons feel complete. So I don't have to, the more that I know I am a true son, I don't have to compete with anybody. And that affects how I father, because I can father without feeling the need to control, because it's not about my reputation. Do you understand? Too often, fathers can, we try to be loving, but we're also concerned that you don't make us look bad. Okay? And you know what? Kim and I both, God has given us a freedom to be able to father and mother without feeling the need to control. We don't want to, because we want to call up what's in you. What's the deep glory? It doesn't need to look like me. It shouldn't look like me. In the specifics, hopefully it'll look like me somewhat in the freedom, in the relationship, in that connection, but not. Okay. You know what, folks? I don't know who's going to end up being part of this flight deck and the Freedom Outpost and everything else, but I know years ago God said that part of the job was to get this ready as a non-sticky platform for the next group, the next generation. That I would be uncomfortable with a lot of that and just get over it now. Okay. You know what? There's stuff that goes on here some nights I'm not comfortable with. I just get over it. It's not mine to control. It's God's. And I don't have to compete. I can feel complete in it. Okay? But then somebody says, well, okay, wait a minute. What about being a servant? Okay, well, but that's not an identity, because from sonship flows stewardship, fellowship, relationship, and out of that, then you serve. But you serve out of that heart, not out of, I have to do this because if I don't get paid. I'm earning my brownie points. I'm getting that's an orphan spirit. You don't want to serve out of that. Okay? Someone who serves you out of that, they're expecting something back. Either God's going to reward me. Okay, wait, but that's not, no. If you're a son, you don't ask the questions about how's God going to reward me. I'm getting it all. I have an inheritance. It's coming. I'm walking in it now. I'm going to walk in more of it. I don't have to compete with you for the resources because they're coming. I got it. I got access to it. Orphans hope for a visitation. Sons and daughters hunger for habitation. Does that make sense? A lot of the church is just, oh, we want a visitation, Lord. Okay, well, that's legitimate, but we want habitation, right? You want to have him so inhabit you, the richness, the connection is there. And so part of the whole thing of this is to move us, I believe, out of the shame, the question of shame or glory. Let me give you a couple of texts. This is from David. How long, O men, will you turn my glory into shame? And see, this is exactly the strategy of the enemy. He wants to take your glory and turn it into shame. Oh, you think you belong to Jesus? Blah, 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 blah. Then how come? Why? Why not? Hello? That voice going off in your head, if you give it attention, that was some of what was Lorraine you were kind of speaking to, right? But then this passage out of Luke 19, the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost. There is a glory that was on Adam that was lost, and on Eve that was lost, and all that loss has been carried down through the generations. And the Son of Man, Jesus, came to restore that which was lost, the original glory of the children of God. And this from Hebrews 2. For it was fitting for him, Jesus, in bringing many sons to glory. Does this make sense? Okay. Yeah, back there? Okay, so let me just give you a couple examples. Esther, right? Authority, attention, identity, and function. So initially, it's a progression that goes to her true identity. She begins originally as an orphan, right? That's the first thing we know about her. But then Mordecai steps in as the authority, and as she attends to him, then she becomes a beloved daughter. Her identity shifts from no place to home. And how does she function out of that? Well, she's helpful, she's obedient, she's compliant, she listens to him. And you know what? That's going to set a pattern for identity that's going to follow her on for a long time. Later on, of course, they send out the word that, the king wants a new wife and he's going to be shopping around, so we're going to set up the window treatments. And, she has an authority now who is the harem eunuch. You read Esther, that's what it is. And so she focuses to him, the H-E is harem eunuch, for those of you not quite getting it fast enough, okay? But she continues to be connected under the authority of Mordecai. How do we know? Because he said, do not reveal your identity to them. Don't let them know you're Jewish. And Mordecai continues to walk in front each day about checking in, make sure how she's doing okay, right? Staying connected. And so out of that, she becomes a court possible, okay? She's one of the many who are going to be in there on the lottery board, and the king's going to pick somebody, okay? Well, then out of that, she gets shifted to another eunuch, the palace eunuch, and her attention now goes to what he's saying, because she says, what should I take to the palace, right? You get this? Hello? So she's getting identity, she's getting instructions out of that, and she moves from a court possible to a court favorite. She's basically staying in that helpful, obedient, compliant. She goes through 12 months of treatments. I loved what Penny was saying last week about saturating in the anointing, okay, for that time. Because her identity was getting prepared to be changed. Now see, she wasn't an orphan. She was a daughter, but she was adding something more. There was more about her identity that was beginning to blossom more and more. And then from going through Mordecai to the harem eunuch, palace eunuch, she eventually comes under the king. So now she's listening to the king. That's an authority over her, but she's staying connected with Mordecai. He says, still don't say who you are. And of course, she becomes queen. But then, of course, it hits the fan with Haman and with the edict and everything else. And so once again, her attention has got to shift over to Mordecai. And he confronts her and says, you have to reveal now your true identity. Okay? And out of that, she becomes the intercessor. And what's interesting in the progression to her true identity, it's only at that point, because her identity is more than being queen. Her identity is a woman who is courageous, who has convictions, who is cunning, and is willing to confront. You don't see those until this time. Hello? See, the function comes out of understanding the identity, but the identity is like pregnant with how you then function. I mean, you have to get that the whole time, even as queen, very constrained. He hasn't sent for me in 30 days. I don't dare go before him. Okay? What kind of queen is that? Right? You're just sort of a high-ranking concubine or something. I don't know. She has to step into a level of that and expand it and say, okay, I'm taking this. I'm going to go before the king. Suddenly he's got to see her in a new way. However he knew her before, true guts to risk death. And then with favor, okay, what do you want? Just come to dinner. Okay. At dinner, okay, what do you want? Half to half my kingdom. Come to dinner tomorrow night. Never seen this part before, right? The courage, the cunning, because she's operating out of a conviction, and ultimately she's going to confront about Haman. Right? Still a huge risk. So here's the question. Who are you? Maybe there's a better question. When are you who you are? Okay. Here's one guy. So if you're looking at me, there is the stressed me sometimes. How many of you run into the stressed me? Okay, well, I mean about me. You haven't. No, you run into me when I'm stressed. Okay, it's not pretty. It really isn't. It's frightening. Now you can run into the passionate me. I'm fired up. I'm passionate about it. Right things. That's kind of me right now in a way. There's the fixer me, which a lot of guys have a fixer me. Part of that. Okay, that's part of our identity. We love to go and fix things. You're just sort of there. There is, because of all the years in business, there's the CEO me. Okay, what's the practicality? How do we go after this? Da 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 da. You know, Kathy gets to see that regularly when we'll talk about different things. That's the CEO part of me, and all that training comes forward. Then there's the relaxed me, which frankly is the best me. It's the best me. And you know what? I can still get things done. I can still be passionate and everything else, but there's something, I'm more settled. And I'm reading another book called The Unhurried Life. And he does a line from Dallas Willard where Dallas Willard asks the guy, he says, so tell me one word to describe Jesus. Give me a word you describe Jesus. Yell it out. What?
Awesome.
What? Awesome? Awesome. What? Holy. Give me another word. What? Compassionate. What?
Deliberate.
What? Deliberate. What else? Everything. Focused. Okay, how about this? Dallas Willard response. He says, I think the best word is relaxed. Ooh, let that percolate, right? No, because he was not hurried. Lord, you got to come and heal our brother. Okay, waits 2 days. On the way to go, Jairus' daughter, and a woman, pulls down healing from 12 years. He goes, and he's sitting there talking, and Jairus is like, okay, come on, can we please, just like, can we go? He's having a whole conversation, just not hurried. He is relaxed because he is doing whatever the Father shows him to do. He's not stressing about it. He's not trying to force it. And I'm having to let that, okay? Because as effective as Jesus was, right? Because I would like to be that helpful. I want to be in that level of relationship, to be that relaxed. Remember, orphans compete, sons are complete. Okay? I think the orphan part of it, we're hustling all the time to try to, because we feel like we got to earn it. Now, there's legitimate things you got to be busy about. Okay? It's just what it is. But what is the sense in you? Can you be outwardly busy and still be relaxed within? And you know what? For those of you who've played a lot of sports, that's actually what you have to learn how to do. Have to be incredibly focused and very relaxed. Because that way you can really, when you're doing your best, trained in a lot of different sports, but martial arts particularly, and you had to have this combination of focus, but you had to be relaxed. If you're too tight, you just can't move. You're just too slow. You got to be in your thinking and in your body. Then there is the father in me, okay, and the warrior in me. So this question of identity, Who are you bringing here tonight? Which personality did you bring? What's going on? How are you doing connected with Jesus? Did you come in lightly through the door or did you come in heavy? By the way, we were meeting on Tuesday morning. Some people, and was it Penny? Who got you get the word about the door? I think that was connected with that. Yeah, about coming through this door, this new door coming in. And she said that, and I got the picture of before you came in that door, walking through a car wash. Thought, okay, walk on through, get all that crud knocked off you, right? So here's an interesting question, because Jesus went to the disciples and said, "Who do you say that I am?" Right? Why would he ask that question? Wait. He's not submitting to their authority, is he? And it's interesting. You got to remember, right? When Jesus is baptized, heaven splits open, and a voice comes and says, "You are my beloved Son. In you I am well pleased." That is the attention to the authority came down there. And he was broken into a new level of that identity. I'll get to that in just a second. But here's what's critical, I think. The reason he asks that and looks for the answer is because he's trying to get at them. Do you know the authority I have to tell you who you are? See, until we get clear, as Peter did, you are the Christ, you are the Messiah. Okay, until we get clarity about that, who that authority is, then he can speak it, because out of that, Jesus responds to him, "Flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you. You got a download." And then he goes immediately, "And I tell you, you are Peter." He gives him a new name, a new identity, calls him up into it, right? Hello? Does this make sense? So we could go and spend, and maybe we need to go back to, I will tell you, one of the things this book convicted me about on the Orphan Spirit, that Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Correct? I love to be presenting truth because of the tremendous power it has for it. But he said one of the dangers is we can be so busy presenting truth after truth after truth that we're not giving people time to incorporate it into the way. And the way has to come first. A way of walking with Jesus. You understand? And I am guilty of that. Okay? Because God gives me new revelations and downloads and I get excited about it. But sometimes I'm going to have to be better at just going and reinforcing some of the stuff we've been talking about till we get it and we're walking it out. This second book about the relentless elimination of hurry is about the way of Jesus, the yoke of Jesus, the pattern of life of Jesus, that we are to apprentice to him and walk as he did. Now, he never uses this line about being relaxed. I just love that one. And I thought, okay, I want to incorporate more of that. Because frankly, if you find me in that point, that's the best me. You know why? I'm very available then. I'm not doing, if I'm stressed here beforehand, it's because I've been running around trying to do all this stuff. Even since I've come back from this time, I've been deliberately slowing down in a number of things to be more conscious of the presence. And it's going to take some work, and it's going to be changing more and more things in terms of who I am and how I operate. And guess what? If you're here, because one of my roles is fathering, that will imprint on you if you want it to. Some of you consider me a spiritual dad. It's a huge honor because that puts me in that authority thing to be able to help and speak into your identity. And if you know me, it's never about, oh, you need to do this or you got to do that. It's what's in you. What's he said in you? That's what I want to call up. I want to call up the freedom from that other stuff. We're called the Freedom Outpost because there's two main things we want you to get free from: the sin and the religion. Very interesting. Before I got into this studying about the Orphan Spirit, what are those two ways it actuates out? Rebellion, sin, and religion. What do you know? Our mandate has been really about breaking that thing off because we want the true glory of the sons and daughters. So, Romans 8, I am convinced that any suffering we endure is less than nothing compared with the magnitude of glory that is about to be unveiled, say that, within us. The entire universe is standing on tiptoe, yearning to see the unveiling of God's glorious sons and daughters. I can't tell you how trying to read this to the guys inside Again, most of whom have been in there 20 years or so. And we've got a window there that looks out on part of the prison yard and all the barbed wire, and there's trees over there. I said, do you get that all of that creation is looking in here and waiting for the revelation of who you are? Do you get what you carry? Do you get that the angels can see it and the demons can see it, which scares the crap out of them? Do you get that's who you really are? But we, with unveiled faces, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory. Are you going from glory to glory? The revelation is coming, the fullness of that, the fullness of it. You'll have to get your new body. But in the meanwhile, are you being transformed from glory into glory? Yes or no? Well, no, a lot of you, not sure. Stop that. What does it say we do? Beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, the image of the Lord. As we behold him, we become like him. Okay? As that happens. See, we watch this. We see this in a lot of you. We watch the glory coming out. We see the change. We see the transformation. We're calling up the freedom, the more of who is at the heart and core there. That's how we want. Because then you're incredibly dangerous. Jesus said, you are the light of the world. That always blows me away. I'm good with him being the light, but when he turns around and says, you are the light of the world, I just go, pretty dim. And it's a cute little thing that some of us learned in Sunday school. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Okay, it's good, but we need to change it. This big badass light of mine. This glory flare. Okay, just a little light of mine. Put it under, Okay, well that's high. That's okay. Thank you. Eternal security? I'll forget about it. Okay, no, if we could get clear on the fact, do you understand who you are? The angels get it. Yeah. They get it. Now, granted, you are like the heir to the throne, like the little kids with the king in place, and they're pooping in their pants, and they're running around, and they're running into walls, and the angels are like the servants that go around going, okay, I can't believe what Prince so-and-so did. Yeah, but he's the prince, he'll be king someday. He's going to rule all this stuff. So you understand what I'm saying? Immature, undisciplined, crazy, whatever, but it's the prince. So, and it can happen moment by moment. Peter in the storm, right? Let me just give you a quick snapshot. You know how that goes, right? Well, let's start at the beginning. The authority is Jesus. His attention is not simply to Jesus, but it's to the Lord of heaven and earth. How do we know that? Because his identity transforms into a water walker. How did he function as the first human jet ski? Okay? But in any time, there are authorities that have voices in every situation. As you know, that thing about with Peter, I said right there, within 2 minutes or whatever, Lord, you're not going to go be crucified. And Jesus has to rebuke him and says, get behind me, Satan. He's realigned under a different authority. So in the midst of the storm, there's the nature reality. Okay? A lot of times you think it's just reality. Okay, well, that may be what God said, but I'm looking at this thing bearing down on me. And his attention goes to the wind and the waves. What happens then, of course, identity becomes drowning man. And his function at that point is largely to be a subject of campfire chuckles. Peter, did you see it? Dude, man, you're like, okay. Oh, I'm really Peter. I'm getting out there. Help me. I mean, sorry. Guys would just, okay, especially somebody like Peter. But see, the potential in any given situation where we are paying attention to. If you go back and read that, it says he was walking on the water. And from all accounts, it's some distance because Jesus They thought he was a ghost. They didn't recognize him. So he had to walk there. And we know because when he started to sink, the Lord reached down and grabbed him. So it means he'd gotten a good part of the way there. That issue about attention. So let me give you this. These are some quotes from this book. What we give our attention to is the person we become. Go back to the issue about time. How much time are you spending on social media? Television. How much time are you spending on video games? Okay. What are you doing with your time? No, sorry. Okay. And you got to be very careful of time of resting and time of numbing out. They're two different things. We won't get into that tonight. This is an amazing quote. Right now, everything is being intentionally designed for distraction and addiction. John Mark Comer, the author of The Ruthless, calls this your, what is it? Your pocket, oh no, I just lost it. Ah, yes, thank you. Your portable dopamine dispenser. Dopamine is a little mental high you get from every time it goes, oh, somebody wants me. Ooh, I got liked. Oh, there's an email. It's reinforcing, okay? It literally does that. It's giving you a little bit of a hit. Dopamine dispenser. Okay. The greatest threat to faith today is not hedonism, but distraction. Your phone doesn't actually work for you, it works for corporations. It's your attention that's for sale along with your peace of mind. Okay? See, the issue is, some other quotes in there. He says, the devil isn't in the details. The devil, wait a minute. The devil, hurry isn't of the devil, hurry is the devil. See, if he can get you to hurry, he can get you to stream on by what God's trying to get through to you. Okay? Because it's be still and know that I am God. By the way, I'll give you one last other tidbit. They've been studying typical attention spans for adults in the United States. And in the year 2000, before all the digital revolution came in, you know what the average adult attention span was? 4 minutes? 12 seconds. 12 seconds. Average attention span before you flip to thinking about something else and go over. You might be in the room, you might be looking at something, but your brain goes. Okay. You know what it is today? It's 8 seconds. 8 seconds. Now here's the strange part. They've done research with goldfish, and their attention span is 9 seconds. Average adult in the United States has an attention span shorter than a goldfish, which explains a whole lot of things, right? Okay, so let me give you one other thing about this. What's a wilderness for? Then Jesus, being filled by the Holy Spirit, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. What is a wilderness for? Separation, preparation, what? Okay. What else? What? Testing, trial, right? Wilderness, what? Dying, okay, yeah. Well, I didn't call it pennies because she's right, because if you look, when Jesus comes out, then Jesus returned in power of the Spirit to Galilee. Now, he was tested, but when he goes into the wilderness, into the solitude and silence, he comes back with strength. Which is why again and again, after all this ministry and everything else, he dismisses people and he goes up to pray. Because you see, there's authority right there with all those people. Oh, you're just wonderful, or you're amazing. The disciples are doing this. They're all this, you know. He's got to, okay, wait a minute. I got to go listen, pay attention to the authority. Does Esther do that? Think about it. 3 days. Fast for me, neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, and so I will go to the king, which is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Where do you think she got instilled enough with her identity to actually stand before the king, to be smart and cunning enough to stand with so much conviction, and then to literally confront the prime minister, the second most powerful man in the kingdom. Hello. Now, this is a woman who hadn't seen the king for a month. How much favor do you feel like she was in? Come on. Haman's seeing the king every day. Sorry, you're going to see somebody and you hope they like you well enough, even though they only see you once a month, versus the person who's with them all day? They drink together. If you read back in the thing, they have fun together. They make a proclamation. Everybody's supposed to bow down when Haman comes. No proclamation was made about the queen to that. Hello? Okay? It's that time in there. So here's the thing. The fight is for your true identity. I told these guys that you were going to have to fight to break through this orphan heart set. And I gave them scriptures that we just tweaked so they could make them about themselves. That I am, the glory is coming in me and so forth. So we just took scripture, rewrote a couple of things so they could proclaim those, gave them a prayer to say. But I told them, guys, this is like this. Let's say I got a pass from the warden for a 3-day pass. Anybody who had this pass get out of jail for 3 days and then had to come back. And I brought this in and I threw it in the middle of the cell block. What would happen? And they just started to laugh. They go, man, there'd be fighting all over. I said, that's the level of passion you're going to have to go after this. Because the enemy has been imprinting messages about your identity forever, and you're going to have to recalibrate that and get attention with the right authority on Jesus. There's that love. Hello. Well, I just want to really be exactly who God's created to me. I'm sorry, but it's a fight. And where do I get from that is this verse out of Hebrews. Therefore, let us therefore strive to enter that rest. See, the wrestling is actually going to come ultimately from a rest in your identity. But to get into that identity, you will have to strive to enter into it. Hello? You'll have to war against the voices that are coming, some that are past. It may have been a parent, it may have been a leader or a teacher that spoke things into you, and they're still articulating who you are. Hello? And then often you just repeat it. You ever do something, you go, how could I be so stupid? Anybody ever do that? Okay. Yeah. Problem with that question is it has the answer in it. Where did the question come from? Where's the identity? We have to strive to enter that rest so that no one may fall by the same sort of disobedience. See, there's an identity at stake in all this. So the question is about, do you really get how the authority, and there are multiple authorities, there's really only one, we know, but there is the prince of the power of the air, and he's trying to use all those other subsets. And what are you giving your attention to, folks? Anybody here fairly addicted to their smartphone? Okay. And I have been very intentional now. Okay. And because when I get a text, I feel immediately like I need to respond. Any of you have that? Okay. Good for you. But this thing can really drive, and as a result can interfere. And so I was trying to be very careful. Lord, I just need to stay. I'm a true son. I don't have to prove my worth by the fact that somebody's going to be upset that I didn't get a text to them right away. And all of that, the authority I'm under, the attention I give to that right authority communicates my identity so that I'm more and more who I actually am and not one of these other personalities and selves. And out of that, then I function. But this is so often the battle right there, folks. Your attention. Who you listen to. So, this makes sense, sort of? Okay. Here's the other factor. I said about risky business, right? Where's the risk in this? It's twofold. It's all over this. If you don't understand this, then the risk is you will not be who you need to be when you need to be it. And like Mordecai spoke to Esther, if you don't arise, if you don't do this, God will find some other way, but there'll be consequences for you. Hello? We want to walk in the fullness. The only way you're going to really walk into the fullness of all you're supposed to be doing is to anchor in with your identity. Otherwise, you're going to be too busy trying to do something, and you do it out of your own strength. Okay? But the other risk is when you move in your true identity, guess what? Enemy won't want to kill you more for it. Okay. Get quicker to heaven. Sorry. My namesake, Stephen in the Bible, right? His full identity and glory comes to bear when they look at him and they're all ticked off and his face is glowing like an angel. Because he's aligned under the authority and he's paying attention not to the fact that they're grinding their teeth, but to the vision of an open heaven and Jesus standing there saying, he's mine. And he functions out of that. Last verse. No one lights a lamp and hides it in a clay of jar or puts it under a bed. Instead, they put it on a stand so that those who come in can see the light. For there is nothing, this is important, nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Folks, please agree with how Jesus sees you. You are more than a servant. I'm sorry. Don't say that. All I want to hear is no. Jesus says to the disciples, no longer do I call you servants, for servant doesn't know what his master's doing, but I have called you friends, intimate allies. You are glorious sons. You have an amazing, and daughters, you have an amazing inheritance. It's there. Can we not walk in that identity? Jean Valjean, after that confrontation and having a new identity spoken into him, we fast forward later and we see him as the mayor of this town, buying this defunct factory and hiring people that had been kicked out on the streets and everything else, standing up in the face of the law to make sure this woman gets justice. There's just like, wow, there's a glory in him. This is a passionate me, by the way, if you're not sure. But this last part, therefore consider carefully how you listen. Whoever has will be given more, and whoever does not have, even what they think they have, will be taken from them. That's the risk, folks, with that diagram. Enemy wants to snuff out this little light of mine. Yeah, it's bigger than that. But we have to be willing to give it room. And that will come by the attention that we're spending. Where is it spent? How are you getting solitude and silence? No matter how little time you have time. You don't manage time, you manage yourself. And how that time is used. Okay. Too much? Too hard? You okay? It is risky business. But all of creation is on tiptoes, waiting for the revelation of who you are. When you go out tonight, I want you to look around at the grass and the shrubs and even the stars, because they're all gone. Can't wait. Can't wait. Hello? Is it scripture or not? Okay. It's all of creation is waiting. And you know what? The world is dying for it. Because we're the light. We're the light. But we have to stay linked under the authority with the right attention for that identity. And then we'll function out of that identity. Not out of some self-righteous kind of whatever. Creating more elder brothers. Okay. Lord, thank you. Right now, all I ask is that you would reveal to these who they really are. You've been fashioning and forming them for an identity, but they still have no clue how brilliant they really are, how vibrant, how important, how necessary, how cherished. How the angels watch him and go, wow. Royalty right there. Son of the King, the daughter of the Most High. Lord, break it open, please, so we function out of those identities. And it's risky business, but it's your business. And we know how the story ends. Amen.